Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I am Joshua Barnes, live from the Firstpost studios. First, let's take a look at the headlines. China denies US President Donald Trump's accusation that it is secretly testing nuclear weapons, saying it has always upheld its no first use policy and commitment to peaceful development. Turkey hosts top diplomats from the Islamic world in Istanbul, aiming to influence Gaza's future as fears mount over the fragile truce between Israel and Hamas. Nepal's Supreme Court blocks Prime Minister Sushila Karki's move to recall 11 ambassadors appointed by her predecessor, dealing a legal setback to her interim government just weeks after she takes office. France's finance minister threatens to ban Shein if it resumes selling childlike sex dolls, days before the Chinese e-commerce giant opened its first store in Paris. And the Maldives becomes the first country in the world to outlaw smoking, buying and selling tobacco for anyone born after 2007 in a sweeping public health move. Hello and welcome. We begin with US President Donald Trump's latest remarks. The Republican leader reiterated his threat of a military operation in Nigeria, citing alleged killings of Christians. Aboard Air Force One, Trump was asked about deploying American troops in Nigeria or launching airstrikes in the West African country. This was his response.
Could be. I mean, a lot of things I envisage, a lot of things. And killing record numbers of Christians in Nigeria. And they have other countries very bad also. You know that part of the world very bad. They're killing the Christians and killing them in very large numbers. Not going to allow that to happen.
Well, Trump's warning came a day after he took to social media to claim that Christians were being targeted in Nigeria. In a post on his platform, Truth Social, Trump said he had asked the Pentagon to map out a possible plan of attack in Nigeria. He added that Christianity was facing an alleged existential threat in Nigeria because of radical Islamists. After Trump's order to prepare for a military attack, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said that the Department of War is preparing for action.
The killing of innocent Christians in Nigeria, and anywhere, must end immediately. The Department of War is preparing for action. Either the Nigerian government protects Christians, or we will kill the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible atrocities.
In response to the US threat, the Nigerian government, led by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, called for a meeting between the leaders. Downplaying Trump's remarks, the Nigerian president's spokesperson said it was his way to force a sit-down with Tinubu and iron out a common front. However, the Nigerian official did not give any details for the potential meeting.
President Donald Trump has a way of, or a unique style of forcing a sit-down by probably tweeting something that is pungent and forceful. We have seen that with the president of South Africa. We don't take it literally because we know Donald Trump thinks well of Nigeria. Donald Trump was the first American president to lift the embargo on the sale of arms.
The row erupted after Nigeria was placed on the US countries of particular concern list. This is for alleged religious freedom violations and includes nations like China, Myanmar, North Korea, Russia and Pakistan. After the list came out, Nigerian President Tinubu pushed back against claims of religious intolerance. Defending his country's efforts to protect religious freedom, he cited constitutional guarantees to protect citizens of all faiths.
The characterization of Nigeria. as religiously intolerant does not reflect our national reality, nor does it take into consideration the consistent and sincere efforts of the government to safeguard freedom of religion and beliefs for all Nigerians.
In a separate statement, Nigeria's foreign ministry vowed to keep fighting violent extremism. It added that Abuja hoped Washington would remain a close ally. Nigeria is almost evenly divided between a Muslim majority north and a largely Christian south. The country is embroiled in conflicts the reports suggest have killed both Christians and Muslims. But Trump's latest remarks paint a different picture. And for more on this, we have with us Dr. Ambrose Igboke, who is an international affairs analyst from Enugu in Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Joshua. It's good to be here.
Yes, let's start off. I'd like to get your opinion. We've heard from the government, but what are your initial thoughts on Trump's claims that Christians are being targeted in Nigeria?
This does not vitiate whatever anybody feels or whatever anybody believes or whatever anybody thinks. I think the Trump is, which any logical person should do, should work with data, with statistics, and with systematic patterns over the last 16 years, since 2009. When you do an analysis of the data you have, you look at the patterns, you'll be clear that some CSOs, civil society organizations, and NGOs over the years have been going from have happened and have the data. We have seen videos of mass graves over the time, every time. In Plateau, we had a bomb blast of a Catholic church in Madala in Niger State. We have one in Owo in Ondo State. We have one in Enugu State, in 2016, where parishioners of a Catholic church were hacked to death where they gathered for early morning mass. So the examples are so many in the last 16 years. And one can only say that based on empirical data on ground, Senator Ted Cruz of the United States is 50,000. The Catholic Global Report, as at August, said that over 7,000 people have been killed in 2025 alone between January and August 10th, that when the report was published, making an average of over 300 Christians every day since 2025. So these are frightening figures. And the statistics vary from 35 to 50,000 Christians that have been killed in the last 16 years. And this is only one way to say this is genocide. And when you look at the patterns, you'll find that it is Christian-dominated areas in Plateau, in southern Kaduna, and in Benue State, that these things are, deployed in large scale. So Trump is working with statistics, is working with the data, and these data are easily realizable. If you go to the internet, a lot of groups are published. And these things cannot just be dismissed with a wave of hand. It is not about the politics of it. It's about the numbers. And when you see the numbers, there's only one thing you can say, genocide. Because when you go to the dictionary meaning of genocide, it means just people that have been killed en mass, a mass killing of a people because of the particular belief, ethnicity, or race, or because of any other issue that the particular people were being targeted. There could be collateral damages of other people, maybe the animists, the African traditional religion, the Muslims, or whatever. But the communities, largely where these things are perpetrated, are Christian communities. So that is, I think that is why Donald Trump said that it was a Christian genocide based on the statistics available.
Let's look at some of the comments then from Donald Trump. Of course, a plan he says is going to be put in place. But what would American military action in Nigeria do to bilateral relations? And how would you expect Abuja to respond?
Well, Nigeria and the United States have had a very, very long relationship. The relationship is strong, it is solid. And a lot of multinationals of United States extraction or for United States origin are working here in the telecom sector, among governments, in oil and gas, upstream joint ventures, even in sharing of military intelligence and training. And even some of the weapons we use, like the Tucano jets that were given to us, were bought from the United States to bolster our efforts. But I think what this is that Donald Trump is just expressing his frustration that after all the military aid, military assistance, military collaboration with the Nigerian government, these terrorists are still killing people, having a field day, the massacre of people from one village to another. People are still buried in mass graves. The cycle of violence continues. I think that is just a frustration. And that is why maybe if Nigeria needs help from the United States to wipe out the terrorists, let it be so. Even Russia, with all his military might, still uses mercenaries. So if Nigerian government needs the services of mercenaries to wipe, what we Nigerians need is that the bloodshed should stop, the massacre should stop, and the genocide should stop. And whatever means it takes to achieve that, I think the Nigerian government should embrace it. But also, I think the Americans should look at tactical assistance rather than having boots on ground for now. It is only if the Nigerian government refuses that, then as a last resort, that can happen. But for now, I think they should have concrete timelines. They can have tactical support for the NATO to make this happen. And then we can now have that support system. And then we can stop these terrorists from attacking innocent civilians and from making people, die just like government is security. And from now, when you see all those massacres, the Nigerian government has failed the thousands of its citizens that have been slaughtered, and we are not in war. Even those in war situation like Ukraine, even Sudan and the rest, I don't think they have this kind of casualties, even in Congo, that are at war. But Nigeria is not at war, yet we have large casualties of a certain number of people in the particular religious sect, particular communities, and the pattern cannot be allowed to continue.
Dr. Ambrose Igboke, thank you ever so much for joining us, giving us your time and also insight as well.
Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Let's now shift focus to the East African nation of Tanzania. The country's president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, has secured another term in office despite widespread deadly protests. She was sworn in after the Electoral Commission announced her landslide victory with 98% of the votes. According to the Tanzanian state media, the ceremony was not to be attended by the people.
Samia Suluhu has not been elected because there was no election in Tanzania on 29th. People were on the streets protesting the fraud staged elections. People were on the streets refusing to be taken.
Well, Hassan's inauguration came a day after the country's main opposition party refused the election result. Arrested leader and Hassan's biggest challenger, Tundu Lissu's CHADEMA party, said that the results were completely fabricated. It added that no real elections took place in Tanzania.
Samia Suluhu has not been elected because there was no election in Tanzania on 29th. People were on the streets protesting the fraud staged elections. People were on the streets refusing to be taken for granted by the current regime. And therefore, what has been announced yesterday is completely illegitimate. And therefore, Samia Suluhu Hassan is an illegitimate president of Tanzania.
Hassan's ceremony also came amid an ongoing internet blackout and a curfew within the country. The government crackdown by authorities started on voting day, October the 29th. After, citizens launched protests to oppose Hassan's probable victory even before the results were officially announced. Hassan contested an opposition-less election, with her contenders either jailed or behind bars. Reports speculate that anti-Hassan protests may have led to the death of thousands. The CHADEMA party claimed that it had recorded no less than 800 deaths by November the 1st.
The figures that have been put out are just rough estimates. And as of yesterday, our colleagues on the ground were saying, okay, the estimates could go up over and above 80, 150.
The Tanzanian government has not commented on the deaths. It has also rejected accusations of using excessive force against protesters. However, reports suggest that police were using the internet blackout to buy time to reportedly hunt down people who might have recorded the atrocities committed last week.
There were incidents of disruption of peace that occurred on election day, aimed at sabotaging or preventing the election from taking place. We are very grateful to the security and safety forces for ensuring that the disturbances that occurred did not affect or stop the election.
Meanwhile, life in the country is far from normal. Schools and colleges remained closed, with public transports halted and some church services reportedly cancelled. The country's economic capital, Dar es Salaam, which was most affected by the protests, remained in a near-total lockdown. According to reports, those spotted in the streets were asked to stop for checks of their IDs and bags, while the shops were only allowed to open in the afternoon. The island of Zanzibar, which enjoys greater political freedom, also saw masked men patrolling the streets armed. A rights group in neighbouring Kenya presented a video from inside of Tanzania painting a grim picture.
Given the human rights and current security situation in Tanzania, it is impossible to say that credible elections took place on Wednesday, October 29th, 2025. It is now day 5 of the internet blackout amidst mass killings and a fraudulent electoral process.
The United Nations has also raised concerns over the situation in Tanzania.
We are alarmed by the deaths and injuries that have occurred in the ongoing election-related protests in Tanzania. Credible reports we have received indicate that at least 10 people were killed in Dar es Salaam, Shinyanga, and Morogoro as the security forces used firearms and tear gas to disperse protesters.
The widespread, deadly protests have raised alarm bells and triggered reactions from across the globe. But the deaths and demand for change do not seem to have rung a bell in the Hassan's government's ears. It continues to deny a crackdown on protesters. This raises questions about Tanzania's democratic future as the country's first female leader continues another term in office. Next, we head to Libya, where the country's education minister has been arrested amid a school book scandal. Prosecutors have detained Ali al-Abed pending an investigation into what they call harm to public interest and violation of the right to education. Libya's education system has been rocked once again, as shortages in textbooks and shortfalls in the education sector persist. Abed himself is only serving in an interim capacity after his predecessor was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison for a similar case involving textbook shortages. Both of these cases have drawn intense public interest in the North African country. Prosecutors say a previous investigation into Abed concerned the granting of contracts to print books for the current school year.
The investigation has highlighted irregularities in the administrative and financial procedures related to the signed contracts, as well as negligence in providing textbooks to 2 million students within the timeframe set by approved policies.
The 2025-26 school year in Libya started more than a month late, and the parents of nearly 2.6 million children have been forced to pay for photocopies of educational materials. In Libyan public schools, textbooks are provided free of charge through to the end of secondary school. These are paid through a special allocation in the Education Ministry budget. But this crisis has taken another interesting turn. The textbooks have reportedly been produced. In fact, they may have been ready for some time and are waiting at Italian ports for shipments to Libya. Local broadcasters suggest imports and disruption procedures are being slowed by logistical and managerial difficulties. Some Libyan contractors have reportedly received notices of non-compliance as a result. Aside from this textbook scandal, education in the North African country faces key difficulties. Schools have previously been targeted by armed forces, leaving buildings in urgent need of repair. Others have been repurposed and are now sheltering displaced families after periods of conflict. Reports also point to a narrow curricula and a shortage of ICT proficient teachers, and despite high general enrolment, there is a big drop-off at secondary schools, with 2023 levels at a little over 80%. The detainment of another education minister further highlights the issues faced by the education system in Libya. Irrelevant of the outcome in this case, a lack of infrastructure and teaching equipment is limiting student access to a quality education. In a country that has faced political instability, civil conflict and factional clashes, stable education seems to be some way off. And for our last story today, let's take a look at the devastation caused by deadly landslides in the East African nation of Kenya. Piles of mud swept through parts of the country's Western Rift Valley and killed at least 26 people. The landslip and flash floods followed heavy rainfall in the Marakwet East region. According to Kenyan authorities, the mudslide destroyed more than 1,000 homes. Videos from the region show a widespread pool of mud covering the land with several trees uprooted. The sludge and tree debris have also entered infrastructure in the affected areas. It has also cut off the affected area from the rest of the region.
It is sad that last night we had a devastating landslide which has affected majorly due to the heavy rains affected Embabut, Sambirir and Endo, majorly Endo, especially Jesongoch area.
And this incident triggered a multi-agency search and rescue operation. According to authorities, 26 have been rescued from devastating floods. The injured were then airlifted to safety for treatment, while a search for 25 others still under the debris is underway. The government has deployed military planes and disaster response specialists for this operation.
One thing I have to tell you for sure is that the area is still susceptible to landslide and it's still very active. As of today, while we were doing the search and recovery or rescue, we have had roads that were already opened being marked again or populated again by mudslides, and so it's still an active incident that we urge the community members to move to safer grounds for purposes of their safety and life and livelihoods as well. Thank you so much.
The country's Interior Cabinet Secretary visited the impacted area to take stock of the situation. He said the government is working to find an alternative settlement for affected people.
I want to ask our people to be on the lookout. We want to request all of them to go to higher ground and to avoid areas that are prone to landslide, because we already know areas that are prone to landslide.
Before Kenya, heavy rainfall and deadly mudslides ravaged neighbouring country Uganda. The landslides in the Sebe sub-region claimed at least 9 lives across 2 districts. The deceased included 6 members of the same family. Kenya's hilly region of Marakwet is prone to landslides, like those in 2010 and 2012 that killed dozens. In 2020, flash floods washed away a shopping centre and 61 people were killed in a mudslide and flash flooding in central Kenya last year. Kenya has been witnessing deadly landslides and floods in recent years. Scientists blame climate change for these intense and frequent extreme weather events. The country's president, William Ruto, has been raising concerns over climate change and has been calling for a united African front to combat the impact. That's it on the show. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Until then, thank you for watching.